Hello and welcome to a new Leela video. I had to go back to the quarterfinals of the CCC 9 event because there are two games, both against Stockfish, that are absolutely amazing and I wanted to review them. And this is the first one, game 12, where Leela with white started with e4, and after d6, d4 and knight f6 we have a Pirc Defense on the board, named after Slovenian grandmaster Vasja Pirc. And this defense is very similar to the modern defense that we've seen in the previous game versus Komodo. But even though they are closely related, there are some subtle differences between them. And the most important one is that in the Pirc, black develops this knight to f6 and puts pressure on this pawn on e4. And this basically forces white now to play knight c3, which is the best way to defend this pawn. Whereas in the modern defense, black delays developing this knight and plays first g6 and bishop g7. But since there's no pressure on e4, this allows white now to move his c-pawn, and he can develop it either to c4 or c3 to blunt this bishop on this diagonal. So after knight f6, knight c3 and g6, we have reached the end of the book, and in this position white's most popular options are knight f3 or f4 first and then knight f3. This is called the Austrian Attack. Or what Leela played, bishop e3, and this is called the 150 attack. Why is it called like this? Well, 150 is actually a rating, and it comes from England, where they have a different grading system. And 150 there is equivalent to about 1800 FIDE. So this opening was named like this because the attacking ideas are easy to understand and easy to follow even at club level. Stockfish continued with bishop g7, and now we have queen d2. And if you've seen my previous video against Komodo, then you know what's cooking here. Now they both castled, and Stockfish played c6. And this is the first step of black's counter-attacking idea here in this opening with b5 and b4, not only to force this knight away from c3 and then take on e4, but also to expand on the queen side where the white king spends his time. And in view of this idea, Leela now played here f3 to defend this pawn on e4, but not only that, f3 could also help with a g4 move later on in the attack. Now, as I mentioned also in the previous video, white's attacking ideas here are very simple. He wants to play bishop h6 to exchange this very strong defender on g7. This also prevents h5 by black, and then play h4, h5, take on g6, and then get with the queen on the open h-file or semi-open h-file if black takes with the f-pawn back on g6, and then mate the black king on h7 or h8 depending which squares are available. And Leela was expecting here b5, immediately starting the counterplay without losing any time, and then the game could continue with bishop h6 and queen a5 and h4 and bishop e6 and bishop takes and king takes and h5, b4, h takes on g6, f takes on g6. To note here that b takes on c3 would lose for black because of this queen h6 check, and black gets mated. If he goes into the corner with the king, then there is this cute mate with queen takes on f8, knight back, and mate with the g-pawn. Or if the king sticks to the rook here, then he gets mated after g takes on h7 check. If the knight takes, then he gets mated on h7, and if he goes to the corner, then again the queen can take on f8 and then mate on g8. So b takes on c3 doesn't work, but black can play here f takes on g6, and the game could continue with knight e2 and so on. But Stockfish didn't go for this one. He didn't play b5. Instead, he played h5, probably to slow down white's attack with h4, h5 and so on. But this weakens the king side a lot, and it's also losing time. And as we'll see, Stockfish was punished ruthlessly here by Leela. She immediately attacked that pawn with g4 and is threatening to open the g file for the attack. And Stockfish can't really ignore that threat, because if he plays here b5, then Leela can take on h5, and after knight takes, there's knight e2. And this knight is going to f4 or g3 to challenge this knight and take it off. And then black's king side is just in ruins. And if the knight takes, then this h-pawn is moving up the boards and attacks g6, opening up the h-file and the g-file. So after g4, Stockfish was actually forced to take on g4. And now Leela immediately continued her attack with h4. She got rid of one pawn on the h-file, this one. And now she wants to get rid of her h-pawn, push it to h5, take there, and open the h-file. And instead of this actually taking here on g4 wouldn't be a good idea, because then you allow this bishop to develop and black increases his control over the h5 square. And after something like bishop e2, knight d7, bishop takes, knight takes, black is doing very well here. If he manages to exchange this bishop, then there's absolutely no attack left for white, and black can concentrate on his counterattack with b5 and b4. So after h takes on g4, Leela continued with h4, and now we have b5. Finally, Stockfish starts his counterattack, but it's way too late. His king side is already compromised. And instead of b5, losing even more time with g takes on f3 is just even worse, of course, because this just helps white to develop. And after something like bishop g4, there's bishop e2, and this knight will move away, and white will get in h5 anyway. So instead of this, Stockfish played b5, but now Leela continued with h5. And after knight takes on h5, she achieved her goal. There are no more pawns on the h-file. She just now needs to exchange this bishop and then get with the queen on the h-file and mate the king. And if instead of the knight, black takes on h5 with the g-pawn, well, then he gets mated after bishop h6. White is threatening queen g5 and queen g7 mate. So the bishop is forced to take on h6. But then after queen takes and knight d7, there's queen g5 check, king a7, rook takes, knight takes, queen takes, king g7, queen g5, king to the h-file, and now rook d2, and nothing can stop mate on h2. g3 is just delaying the mate for one move, so black is done. So after h5 and knight takes on h5, Leela continued with bishop h6. She wants to exchange now this bishop as planned and then get to the h-file, do something with this knight and mate. Stockfish played here b4, counterattacking on the knight, knight e2, and now he played queen a5, attacking this pawn on a2, so Leela defended that with the king. Now g takes on f3, knight f3, bishop g4, and now Leela played knight h4. And you may think, as I initially did, that this knight h4 move is made only to save the knight, but no. Leela has such a deadly threat in this position. Bishop takes on g7 and knight f5 is lights out for black. And just to illustrate that, if black plays now something bad, let's say like a6, then bishop takes, and there are many lines here with knight takes and king takes, but just to show the best line, king takes on g7, knight f5 check, and now if the pawn takes, then queen g5 check. Basically every line where this pawn takes is followed by queen g5 check, winning down the house. After king a7, there's rook takes, bishop takes, queen takes, king g7, queen g5 check, king a7, and now either rook d3 or bishop g2 and rook h1 mates the black king. Or alternatively, if instead of g takes on f5, black takes with the bishop, then the rook can take on h5, and when the pawn takes, then queen g5 again. And the point is that the bishop can't block, because this queen on a5, the attacking queen on a5, would actually be lost. So after knight h4, Stockfish played instead bishop e6, and he's threatening a mate on a2, so Leela played b3. and now we have knight d7, but black is essentially lost. His position didn't get better. Leela now continued with bishop h3, and her idea is to take on g6 and then take this bishop on e6, or the other way around, take this bishop first and then take the pawn on g6. So Stockfish took on h3, rook takes, and now we have e6 to stop again this knight f5 idea, which is still very strong and very much in the position. And Leela continued now with rook g1, building the pressure on the black king side. Stockfish responded with rook d8, and now Leela came up with e5, very cute move. The point is to cut away the queen from the defense on the king side. And for example, if this pawn takes here, then there's bishop takes on g7, king takes, and now queen g5, pinning this pawn to the queen. And Leela's idea now is quite simply to take on g6 and just mate the black king. So instead of d takes on e5, Stockfish took here with the knight, so that after bishop takes and king takes, queen g5 now doesn't work, because then there's knight c4 and black manages to exchange the queens and survive. But Leela here changed plans and took this knight on e5, and after queen takes, the queen finally managed to get back to the king side and defend, but here Leela played queen d3, attacking this very sensitive g6 square. She's again threatening knight takes on g6, queen takes on g6, and then made the black king. So Stockfish played queen f6 to defend on g6, but knight g6 still works, because now after pawn takes, this pawn is pinned to the king, so the rook can take on h5. And Leela is up a piece. She has this extra knight, and she still has the attack. She threatens now knight f4 and then take on g6 with the rook, and it's game over. And the queen can take on f4, because then queen g6 mates, and if after knight f4 black plays g5, then the queen mates on h7. So nothing to do here. Stockfish decided to give up the queen to prolong the game a bit, and he played here queen f1 check, and after rook takes and rook takes, she played knight c1 in order to attack this rook and not allow black to capture a full rook. And here black at least has to give up the exchange, and then after king takes, he can take the rook on h5. But Leela has now a queen against a rook and a bunch of pawns, and this is an easy win. And Leela's queen gets into Pac-Man mode immediately and starts winning down those pawns. And here after the c6 pawn is gone, she goes for the h pawn. And after a couple of checks, wins it down. And now she goes for the a pawn on the other side of the board. And after that, she gives up the queen, because she wants another one. And here she gives up actually the a pawn after she queens it. And she advances with the king, and now she gives up that pawn. And eventually she wins in this elementary, barely winning king and pawn endgame. But it's enough for a win, and now she promoted to a queen. And here you go. She eventually mates the black king. What an attack! Unbelievable. Here after h5 in the opening, white was already much better. Apparently this h5 move is just too weakening, and white's attack is just rolling after that. Amazing. Please subscribe, like and share, and check out some of the other games. Thanks for watching, and see you soon. Bye bye.